It is Friday, Freaky Friday. Welcome to the Desmond Johnson Show. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson, joined by WRAL personality Dennis Cox, co-host of the Panthers Playbook, producer of The Drive with Tim Donnelly. You can hear in the Triangle from 3 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. We're going to check in on our Carolina Panthers. I've been out for a couple of weeks. Coming back around now, I believe Panthers will be back next week. We took a little bit of a break after the Super Bowl, so we'll get you after the Combine, free agency getting ready to begin. We'll talk about the needs and the wants of the Carolina Panthers. And, of course, whenever I have my guy on, I got to talk some WWE. Haven't had a chance to do it in a couple of weeks. Elimination Chamber is Saturday. Road to Wrestlemania has already begun. We'll get Dennis's thoughts on what may or may not be happening regarding all that and more. It's the Desmond Johnson Show. It's a loaded one. Let's go ahead and run that intro.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city needs that. I've been number one, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you won't and get your weed whack. I'm going harder than a martyr on the starter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's 4th and inches, I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And welcome into a brand new edition of the Desmond Johnson Show here Friday, February 28th, 2025, here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. Some programming notes after our afternoon block today that starts at 3 o'clock. You can get all the Carolina Panther info you need from the Fans First Sports Network and the Keep Pounding Podcast Network that we run over here. There's an hour and a half long winning the division with Ryan Smith and former NFL tight end Ben Troop. That drops around 3 o'clock. It's actually already out, but it'll be on Tobacco Road's airplay probably around 3. Inside the Vault with Ryan Smith, more draft coverage. That's right after that. And then we do have some baseball. East Forsyth taking on Ledford live. 7 o'clock tentative first pitch. Myself and Chad Delp will be out at the Monk for that tonight. So you got some live sports action here on Friday night as well. Dennis Cox joining us from WRAL. You can follow him on X at TheFanRookie. What's going on, brother? How you doing, man?
Oh, living the dream, Des, one day at a time. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. So I want to dive right into it while folks are on their lunch break here, get them a fix of Panthers coverage. And I was telling you off the camera that I'm typically not one of the ones. I don't do a deep dive when it comes to the draft stuff because I feel like it's 2 months worth of us kind of going through 20 different prospects, and then the Panthers are just going to do like this and do something completely different from what we were talking about for 2 months. And I learned from Believe in Panthers, it's like, you know what? I'm not going to do that this month. I'm going to wait till the Combine, start talking about it again, see what they do in free agency, and then we'll have a better idea of what they're going to do in the draft. I do like that they've moved free agency in front of the draft as opposed to the way it was before where it was after the draft. So you kind of can get through some of your needs before you even go into the draft and just pick BPA, which is what I'm hoping they do. I'm going to do this a little bit differently with you because I know you and Chris Lee run Panthers Playbook, one of my favorite Panther podcasts, by the way. I try to catch it each week when you guys put it out. I love what you guys do. Let's start off this way. In a perfect world, who's the prospect that you've been looking at that even though the Panthers are picking at 8, for those who don't know, they're 8th overall pick, first round. Who's the prospect you wish the Panthers could land and may not be able to in this upcoming first round draft?
He's probably the guy that might go number 1 overall. That's Abdul Carter from Penn State. Like that's the ideal. It ain't happening. We talked to Jordan Reed from ESPN and a few others on Panthers Playbook, and it's like, yeah, Abdul Carter would be perfect. Just go ahead and keep that in your dreams because it's not going any further than that. that guy, it's because even if he doesn't go number 1, there's also the possibility that we all know that the Cleveland Browns picking at number 2 are looking to trade Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett has asked for a trade. It's like, okay, well, if you eventually do honor that wish, well, okay, you got his replacement right there. He ain't getting past like 3 because someone eventually might jump up to go ahead and take him just because he's that good. I know those are the reports about the foot injury and stuff that he was dealing with. If he played like that with the foot injury, imagine when the foot heals up. So anyway, he's one of probably 2 or 3 guys that are truly top tier in the draft. It's he and Travis Hunter. If you want to slide another guy into that mix, okay, fine. But it's Abdul Carter's ideal, but he ain't dropping to number 8. I mean, but again, if we could fantasy pick this thing,
yeah.
Abdul Carter.
And for me, you mentioned the name. It's Travis Hunter. Like, I mean, the dude's the Heisman Trophy winner. He started talking to the press yesterday at the Combine. He's dead set on trying to play both ways. Now, I've never seen it happen before in terms of full time. I'm trying to think of the last player I could think of that did it success. Maybe Deion Sanders, and that was.
I mean, he was the closest thing to it. Yeah, he was the closest thing to it. Champ Bailey would occasionally line up at wide receiver. That was really about it. But even to that extent, it was nowhere near what Travis Hunter's done. Here's the thing with Hunter is that each team kind of views him a little bit differently. Tennessee, I think, views him as a defensive back, whereas Cleveland has said, yeah, we think he can be a top-tier wideout. So, again, it kind of just depends on what team, how they want to use him. Dan Morgan's like, yeah, he's capable of playing both sides. So, again, it's kind of up to every team about what they want. I think this team, the Carolina Panthers, they've done so little to invest on the fronts of both sides of the ball. When I was actually filling in for Tim Donnelly on the drive out here in Raleigh, one thing I brought up right after the Super Bowl is the lack of premium picks on premium positions by the Carolina Panthers, even going back the last 10 years, but especially over the last 5. Premium picks being day 1, day 2, so rounds 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Premium positions being obviously the most premium being quarterback, which they spent a ton of draft capital to try and find one. But outside of quarterback, it's edge rushers, offensive tackles, and then also the interior of your fronts, and then corner. Like that, those are the premium positions. If you look about what they've drafted over since 2014, they've only drafted 5 guys on the offensive line in rounds 1, 2, and 3.
Wow.
5. Greg Little was one of them. Trey Turner was one of them. Taylor Moton was one of them. Brady Christensen was the other one, and Ike Ekwonu. That's it. And that's why they had to go spend a bunch of money to go pay Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt, because you haven't invested truly premium picks and premium positions. On the defensive side of things, just over the last few years, you drafted Derek Brown as an interior defensive lineman. Great pick. We all love Derek Brown. We've seen what he's capable of doing. And that's DJ Johnson. That's it. Like, that's all you've done. And you wonder why your defensive line was so bad this past year. You drafted a project with the 3rd round of DJ Johnson that just hasn't worked out. And then you had to go spend money on A'Shawn Robinson, Shai Tuttle, DJ Wanham, Jadeveon Clowney. You had Justin Houston. Like, you had to spend all this money. And then all of a sudden you're in a tough position financially in terms of salary cap. Not as bad as some other teams, but the Carolina Panthers finished with the least amount of cap space in 2024 at the end of the season. They had the fewest. They had to restructure DJ Wanham and Shai Tuttle's contract during the season just to make cap space for them to bring up guys from the practice squad.
Yeah.
That's the situation they're in, because they've invested so few premium draft picks on the premium spots that they need to build a quality team. They spent more draft picks, 1st and 2nd round picks, on wide receivers than they have defensive linemen over the last 4 years.
That explains a lot, too, because Skylar Callahan from Sports Illustrated, who's doing Believe in Panthers with us the past couple of years, he mentioned this last August. He was like, me and Jonathan Stewart are all like, oh, we're going 10-8 and blah, blah, blah. We're all optimistic, like everybody is in August when you're 0-0. And he was one of the few that was like, the main issue with this roster is depth. If they start having injuries, it's going to fall off a cliff fast. And that's literally what kind of happened, especially on the defensive end, where, man, dude, there was some weeks after like week 10, 11, where they were trotting dudes out there. I didn't know who they were. And I cover the team. I'm like, who was that? Who was that? Like, just dudes off the street that they just had to plug in,
I don't think they even knew who those guys were.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest. I don't think they did.
Get in here.
I don't think they did. Like, hey, what? Hey, you.
Hey, you wear extra large? Get in here. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, seriously.
That's reps for us. But that's kind of why I'm like, okay, yes, they have the 8th overall pick. Would they be better served trading down? And one of the things, okay, so about 2 months ago, really before the Super Bowl, I kind of floated this thing out on X. And you know how X can be a cesspool at times. They're just waiting for you to put an opinion out there so they can jump on it. And I was like, okay, they traded up in the 2nd round last year to get Jonathan Brooks, right? And to me, that tells me they had some sort of plan in place. They wanted Chuba as their lead back. They wanted a back to complement him going forward. They liked Jonathan Brooks. By all accounts, he was the highest rated running back in the draft going into it last year. And unfortunately, he gets hurt. We only see him for a couple of games. Looks like he's going to miss all of next season. I don't think that plan went away in terms of what they wanted to do in terms of protecting Bryce. They fixed the interior of the offensive line. It looked like the next step on offense was to fix the run game, which is what Dave Canales said coming in last year. I say all this because on X, I floated the idea of the Panthers actually kicking the tires on Ashton Genty, the running back from Boise State. And everyone and their mother was like, no, 8 is too high. You can't draft a running back that high. You can get one in the 4th round and all this stuff. I'm like, if it was that easy, we would have done that already. Like this notion that running backs are expendable, maybe it's because I'm working with Jonathan Stewart. And like, it doesn't feel like that's actually the case when you're watching TV. We just watched the Philadelphia Eagles run down the Kansas City Chiefs back, all year. They were number 1 rushing offense all year. Run the ball, stop the run, will never go out of style. And I don't understand this idea that, say the Panthers do draft Genty at 8 or whatever, like, is that a bad thing? I think he's rated like number 2 or 3 overall in terms of like player prospect in the entire draft. Like, would you be mad if the Panthers actually did something like that and actually double dipped and drafted him early in the 1st round?
I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't like it. I really wouldn't. I mean, it's not the fact, but here's the thing. If the defense was solid, then I'd say go for it. But that's a luxury that this team can't afford. True. It's just not. There's so many holes to fill, especially since you just paid Chuba Hubbard a good chunk of money. And the fact that there is a ton of running back depth. You can go get a guy that could have a lot of speed and be a good pass catcher out of the backfield. Get Brashard Smith possibly in the 4th round. You have a couple of those. You have 2 4th round.
I like Amari Hampton from North Carolina, actually, but I think he's going to be gone. And I think actually he's going to end up going to Dallas, like early, mid 1st round. I think there's going to be a run on running backs, is what I'm saying. And normally there's not. And to me, I'm just like, who's the most talented like player that's on the board at 8? Get him. Get the most talented player.
But again, there's also the whole thing of like, well, what's value? Like, again, they're the best player, but again, what's value? And that's something that, again, running back at that position is just, that's not going to bring a ton of value to your team, especially if you know that Chuba Hubbard, you're going to try and hopefully turn and hand the ball to him 20 times in a game. Who's going to have more impact and value for your team? The name that's getting linked with the Carolina Panthers a ton is Jalen Walker, who's a North Carolina native, who's from Salisbury. The reason why I think that's a pick is, to me, I would hope they would go defense in that regard. Again, because like I said, premium picks on premium positions. Running back is not a premium position. It's just how the league values it. Whether you think it or not, it's what the league sees.
It's true. I mean, it's true.
So you did mention the possibility of trading down. It's a two-way street. Who's moving up and to get whom? That's the thing. Is that who's moving up to get home? It's a two-way street. Now, you mentioned Ashton Genty. You mentioned the Dallas Cowboys. Remember, the Dallas Cowboys apparently were really high on Jonathan Brooks. Panthers, after trading down to the 2nd round, moved up slightly to get Jonathan Brooks last year. Who says that Dallas doesn't want to possibly jump a team that's 8, 9, 10, or sorry, 9, 10, 11?
I think they're
Dallas
like 12 or 15, yeah.
They're picking at 12 to go get Ashton Genty. Now, if that's what they want, it's Jerry Jones, because Jerry Jones likes to do fun things like that. If that's the case, if I'm moving from 8 to 12 and there are guys that I really love that are you still think are going to be there at 12, then make that move. So the NFL, they have what's called like a trade value chart. So basically you're assigning a numerical number to each draft pick in the draft. So when you're making these trades, you try and make the numbers balance and equal as much as possible.
Isn't that the Jimmy Johnson scale or whatever?
Jimmy Johnson, the Jimmy Johnson scale. And a lot of teams really use this when it comes to trading picks. So if, for example, if Dallas wanted to move up from 12 to 8, Dallas would also have to give Carolina its 3rd round pick, which is, I think is remember correctly, is pick 76 overall in the draft. Panthers already picking, I think remember correctly, it's 74 in the 3rd round. Mm-hmm. So you would swap 8 and 12. Panthers would get the 3rd round pick from Dallas, and I think Carolina would have to send their 7th out to Dallas, again, to make things balanced numerically. If that's the case, make that happen.
Yeah, let's go.
Make that happen all day if you're Carolina. But again, with the depth of this draft, it's not super high-end, like there's 9, 10 super high-end guys, but this is a draft where you can get a ton of starters. I was listening to Todd McShay, formerly of ESPN. He has the show, The McShay Show. He has 30 defensive linemen between interior and edge that he has given grades for the first 3 rounds of the draft. 30. 30.
And it would be crazy for
insane.
Carolina to ignore that, considering they just allowed the most points in franchise history or NFL history or whatever it was at the end of last season. And the ones that I see online that are like, we should take like Ted McMillan from Arizona or somebody like that, like an offensive player. And again, I said Ashton Genty, if we did something to that effect. Deep down, I know they need to go defense. Like they need to go defense heavy first 3-4 rounds, like and free agency. Like they need to. It feels like they told Giro Evero last summer, "Hey, we got to fix the offense first because Bryce is our biggest investment. We're not leaving you hanging. If you have a bad season, we're not going to fire you or anything like that. Just hold on, just hold on for dear life, and we'll come back and help and get you some reinforcements next year." It's almost like a promise. Like it feels like it was made because he didn't go out looking for any place else to go or anything like that. There was never really a rumor he was leaving, even though they were having record-setting, like literally dudes were running for 200 yards on us. It felt like every week at the end of the season, every team was 150-plus yards on the ground. You just can't win games that way in any era of the NFL. So for me, I'm looking at defense there. And the prospects I keep landing on besides Walker from Georgia, I'm very intrigued by Will Johnson from Michigan, the defensive back. And pairing, I'm looking at who can you pair with? And I'm like pairing him with J.C. Horn. First of all, get J.C. Horn signed. That should be priority number one. Mm-hmm. Get him done. Get him under wraps. He wants to be here. They want to be here to watch the build and be a part of it. And he, to be honest, when he's healthy, he's a top 5 cornerback in the league, in my opinion. You put Will Johnson with him on the other side. Now you've got something to work with defensively where you can start locking down some of these wide receivers in the NFC South. The other kid, and I've known about this kid since he played at Julius Chambers, 7 years ago or whatever, when I first started doing a lot of Tobacco Road stuff. That's James Pierce, Jr. from Tennessee. Ran a 4.5 40 yesterday, which is the fastest one out of all of them.
He backed it up with a 4.47.
4.47 after that. People comparing him to Brian Burns is what I'm seeing. I don't really see that, but I watched him play at Chambers. He's from Charlotte, so he's a local. Played at Chambers. He was on their 2 state championship teams, 2018 and 2019. Literally when we were still 8 classifications across the state. So they're in 4AA. So we would be in Chapel Hill doing the East Forsyth Cardinal Gibbons state championship game. And then as we're leaving, they're walking in to do the 4AA game. And it was like 2 years straight in a row where like we did the East game. Vance was the first year, and then they changed the name to Chambers. They came in. Pierce was on that squad and was going to Tennessee. And now it looks like he's going to be a top 10 pick. It feels like he would be the better pick in terms of fit for Carolina than the Walker kid from Georgia, although they kind of seem interchangeable to me. Which one, if they're both sitting there and the Panthers haven't traded down and it's the 8th pick, what name would you turn in at the podium if those 3 are there? Johnson, Pierce, and Walker from Georgia.
I go back to my coaching background. I coached college lacrosse for 9 years. I liked players with versatility. And some people might look at Jalen Walker as a quote-unquote tweener. I see him as a versatile piece that can move around anywhere on the field. He actually said at the combine, there was yesterday or 2 days ago, "Hey, what position do you see you as?" Like, yeah, my position is anywhere that has me on the field. Like, that's where I play. Yeah, I was like, it's the mentality type thing. I actually think that he has the ability, just watching what everyone else sees. I know we talked to Jordan Reed from ESPN. He gave the comp to Frankie Louvu. We've seen Frankie Louvu excel in the Panthers defense a couple years ago. That was his comp. Now, Frankie Louvu left for whatever his reasons are, but again, that's the comp. Here's how I also view this as well. If he can play the edge, great. He can also be off the ball. It can allow Evero, if he chooses to actually use him in multiple things. Now, the question is with Evero's scheme, which can be kind of rigid in what guys do. For example, we saw Jeremy Chin barely get onto the field under Ejiro Evero. And like, that's a piece that we saw as a hybrid safety linebacker that you think, hey, we can move this guy in different spots and build things around him. We never saw that under Evero. So that's kind of my...
Those 2 names you just mentioned, we just watched them in the NFC Championship game with the Commanders. Literally just 2 guys that we drafted or brought in. And
go figure. But here's something that I know Evero does with his edge guys. They're outside linebackers. They're not true defensive ends. We've seen plenty of times DJ Wanham, Jadeveon Clowney, Brian Burns when he was here a couple years ago under Evero's system, dropping into pass coverage because he treats them as true outside linebackers with the 5-man front. So who's actually best to be that? It's Jalen Walker. Have you seen James Pierce drop into pass coverage?
No.
That's not his forte.
Yeah.
So I don't want to draft somebody like him or Mykel Williams from Georgia as an edge guy if they're going to be dropping into pass coverage, because that's not what they do. So to me, Jalen Walker has the ability to be, again, an edge or an off ball and drop off into coverage if that's what Evero wants to do. He actually has that skill set. And if Evero's gone after this year, his versatility will allow him to adapt to another system if Evero is not brought back after this year. Or even if Evero is here for another year. Like, he has that versatility to be moved into a different system as well. So that's the way I view it.
It sounds like you kind of comp him kind of more of like a Micah Parsons type, where he's kind of doesn't have to put his hand in the ground, can stand up and go. He can put his hand in the ground if need be, can cover in the passing, can sack, can do, and that kind of works on this offense. I kind of can see that. All those names you mentioned earlier that they had to plug in on defense, none of those names, Shy Tuttle, Ashawn Robinson, none of them I can see actually probably being here in 3 years. Like, they don't feel like they're part of the future. It feels like they're part of the present in terms of just plug and play. But eventually they're going to have to start adding some pieces beside Derek Brown there that are homegrown draft talents. And it would make sense to start on the D line. They took care of the offensive line last year. Now it's time to take care of the defensive line. And the linebacking core in particular, I would think they might double dip in there somewhere in the middle rounds.
You mentioned Will Johnson. I love the idea of having another guy on the outside that can shut down alongside J.C. Horn. But what helps your secondary a ton when your defensive front is getting a lot of pressure? It takes it releases a lot of stress off of the defensive backs in the secondary. Like, hey, I don't have to cover for 5 seconds because the defensive line can't get home. But if I have defensive line, whether it's guys getting an interior push, Mason Graham falls to you, I wouldn't hate that either. Guys that can get an interior push, that's what's going to help your secondary a bunch as well. That's where, again, we saw the Eagles, for example. They've invested so much on the defensive line. They've drafted 3 defensive tackles in the first round for 3 straight years. Defensive tackle. Georgia guys, go figure. But they had Fletcher Cox, and we're still drafting defensive tackles in the first round and defensive linemen. They were using premium picks on premium spots. Yeah. That's what I want to see the Panthers do. Build the fronts first, then go out.
All right, so with free agency coming before the draft, it used to be the other way around. I do feel like, and we said this at the top of the show, that that'll give the Panthers an opportunity to see what's out there free agency wise and plug some holes. So by the time they get to the draft, they can really go BPA, best player available, as opposed to drafting on need, which is where a lot of teams reach for players and they don't pan out. So Dennis Cox joining us here. Follow him on X at the Fan Rookie, co-host of the Panthers Playbook over on WRAL's YouTube channel, and producer for The Drive with Tim Donnelly on WRAL's Afternoon Drive, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday in the Triangle area. Whenever I have you or Chris Lee on, especially if it's near a huge pay-per-view or if it's this part of the year, I love to talk a little WWE before I get you out of here. Elimination Chamber is Saturday. What was going on in your mind last Friday during SmackDown, during Rock's appearance with Cody Rhodes, and what did you make of what he was babbling about? Because he kind of went back and forth between babyface and heel like throughout this whole promo. Yeah. So it was really confusing. And then the whole want your soul thing, it feels like they're trying to kind of run back the corporate champion storyline that Rock was in with Vince McMahon back in like 98, 99, where Stone Cold Steve Austin was the babyface. Rock turns heel, becomes champion for the first time, and is with Vince McMahon until he eventually turns on Vince McMahon. It sounds like they're hinting at that, but I don't know if that's exactly where they're going. What is your mindset going into Saturday for Elimination Chamber? Who do you think wins the men's Elimination Chamber to get this title shot against Cody Rhodes in the main event? Let's start there, and then we'll go into the WrestleMania aspects of this.
This one is so intriguing to me because they have planted a ton of different seeds that WWE has that they can have for like long-term storytelling. Like, they've set up possibly if they wanted to go CM Punk, if they wanted to go that route, they could. Remember, CM Punk still has that favor that he can call in from Paul Heyman. Yeah. What's the favor? When does that actually cash in? You know, you still also have John Cena on making that final run. Maybe it's John Cena on a babyface run to take down a corporate Cody Rhodes. I think at some point, I think it happens after Mania, in my opinion, but at some point, I think Cody Rhodes needs to turn heel and really actually have a long run as a heel to really build somebody up. I think that really to build a long-term storyline to whomever takes him down. We already know that, main event Jey Uso is going to be taking on Gunther for the heavyweight at WrestleMania. So again, there are a lot of different ways. I mean, does Cena actually take this? Does Punk call in his favor in some way, shape, or form? Who knows? Like, who says Paul Heyman doesn't turn eventually against Roman Reigns or CM Punk, and then Cody Rhodes joins with Paul Heyman? You don't know. Like, there's a lot of different variables that go on into this. You still kind of have a lot of loose dangling ends, but guess what? There's still that whole thing you can go back to. Who's the final boss? It's The Rock.
Right.
The Rock is Cody's final boss. Like, you still need to have a payoff on that. If The Rock tells Cody, I'm the final boss, that last level that he needs to reach still needs to get there.
See, and you could kind of get there by doing him joining with Rock and kind of build him up that way. And then the big breakthrough is him coming back as a face to face Rock. And you could do that to lead into next year's WrestleMania. Like, it writes itself. I'm looking at Elimination Chamber, the swerve. I think that's going to happen. I've never been comfortable with Gunther versus Jey Uso as a main event for WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I love Jey Uso. I know he's got the fans doing the eat and all that stuff, but I still don't feel like he is a WrestleMania main eventer. Like, it doesn't even feel like Kofi Mania. Like, to me, like, that was a little different. It's not the same. So I'm thinking of it like this. What if John Cena wins the Elimination Chamber, like people are expecting? But the swerve is he doesn't challenge Cody Rhodes. He challenges Gunther too. And they make that a triple threat for night one. So you get all that over there on the first night. Now it leaves you with this hodgepodge of Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes. Make that a fatal four-way night two. Because every single one of them, they've kind of made it intertwined where their stories are kind of intertwined now. Roman and Seth have been going on for over a decade. CM Punk is intertwined with this, what you just said, with the favor from Survivor Series and all that. Cody's been teaming with Roman Reigns in the bloodline, which is opposite of where they were at this point last year. And then Seth Rollins, we just saw the interaction with him and Cody on Raw, where they're comparing each other stabbing people in the back over the years or whatnot. So all four of them have a story that intertwines. And I'm like, why not just put it out where the only way you can do it is get Cena out the way? And to do that and still give him his moment, put him against Gunther and Jey Uso. That writes itself too, because who eliminated John Cena from the Royal Rumble? Jey Uso. And Gunther has been built as this like super champion or whatever, but doesn't really get the shine that you would think a world heavyweight champion would get going into a WrestleMania event. I don't even think he was on the last pay-per-view. So
no, he wasn't.
Put Cena there. That gives you boom main event status for there. Cena, Jey Uso, Gunther, and you do that so Uso eats the pin. And Cena becomes champ or whatever it might be, or maybe Cena doesn't become champ and that causes him to turn. Who knows? But you can do all that night one.
Yeah.
Night two, fatal four-way. And in that match, that's when you have whatever happens with The Rock in terms of Cody going heel at the end, or CM Punk gets his main event moment at WrestleMania. There's going to be a Roman Seth exchange like that, because you're going to have Roman Reigns in the main event somehow. And I can't figure out how they're going to do it at this point because he's not in Elimination Chamber. And then I started thinking about, like, well, Elimination Chamber and then didn't really matter last year for WrestleMania. They kind of changed the whole. None of those were main events really. It was Roman and Cody night two, and then they did the tag team night one, and the lead up was great for last year. It might have been the best lead up to a WrestleMania of all time in terms of what they did. The only way I could see it topping that would be what I'm describing in terms of making this a fatal four-way, and you have 2 months of just interactions between the four of these guys. Do you think that's a possibility, or do you think they're going to do the Cody John Cena thing that everybody seems to think they're going to go? That just seems boring to me unless somebody flips and goes heel.
That's real tough. I hope I'm a big fan of a singles match generally for a main event of a WrestleMania. That's just generally how I am. Not saying that that it's a bad decision to go with the fatal four-way or whatever it might be. It's interesting. Yeah, the Gunther doesn't eat the pin but loses the title. Now it's like he's trying to track down Cena. Then Cena can put him back over, and Gunther takes the title back from him because Cena then takes the pin. That I think could actually be a long-term build for Gunther. Mm-hmm. I think that's actually a good way of building that up long-term storyline wise. It's interesting that you mentioned the fatal four-way aspect of it with Rollins, Punk, Roman Reigns, and Cody, especially if you have the Paul Heyman factor. into all this. There's the
Because
Paul
he's
Heyman
intertwined with
factor.
all of them. Yeah.
Or who's to say that The Rock doesn't step in? It's like, no. I have unfinished business with Cody Rhodes, and he makes sure Cody wins it because I want to take the belt from him. Like, because again, there's the storyline and all that kind of comes with it. Again, going back to last WrestleMania, if it is Cody versus Cena, I think if Cody wins, the heel turn has to come with it, and I guess it's got to become a white hot heel turn after WrestleMania.
It makes me think of when Stone Cold turned on The Rock and then that WrestleMania and joined with Vince McMahon and the chair shots or whatever. It'd literally be that, except it would be Rock as Vince McMahon and it would be Cody as Stone Cold, basically becoming the WCW champion, whatever it was during that invasion storyline. I think that was around the same time. But yeah, I do think you're right. I think they are hinting at Cody going heel just to kind of keep this going a little bit longer. I didn't think they were going to keep the belt on a full calendar year, but they have, and he's been a good champion, but there's some sizzle or something that's lacking for me in terms of, it's not must-see TV every week. I can keep up with what's going on, so I know what's happening. But like at this point last year, man, the Bloodline storyline was so huge that it was just overshadowing the entire WrestleMania event, and they haven't begun to set that up yet. It does look like Rock and Cena are going to be here for the next 2 months, kind of building these stories. So that makes me feel like, okay, they're doing something with them. I don't know if Rock and Cena will cross paths in that way, and I don't think Rock's going to wrestle this year. But to have Rock kind of overseeing that night 2 thing with Cody and everything else, and some of the other storylines write themselves too. Roman and Seth, the Shield, CM Punk, they got introduced as the Shield, being the bodyguards for CM Punk through Paul Heyman. You know, like that's kind of all began, and Seth has touched on that with CM Punk in promos back and forth. So that history is there. The favor that you mentioned that they did for Survivor Series for CM Punk, that's floating there. We have no idea what he's going to do with that. I assume it'll be put me in the main event of WrestleMania. Like it'll be something to that effect. And then the way they both got, they all got eliminated from the Royal Rumble. All 3 of them eliminated themselves, and then the scrum outside. To me, that was foreshadowing. The 3 of them are going to be involved in something in the main event of WrestleMania. It doesn't make sense for it to be a triple threat without the belt. So you have to kind of put Cody in there at that point. But in order to do that, whoever wins Elimination Chamber has to not challenge Cody. They have to challenge Gunther instead. And it doesn't make sense for anybody else in the Elimination Chamber to do that but John Cena. So that's what I'm kind of thinking out loud. Sometimes I'm right. A lot of times I'm wrong when it comes to the booking for this stuff. But it's fun to fantasize and kind of figure out what they might possibly do.
But I think that's where WWE has set themselves up for all these possible scenarios, is because, again, they've planted all these different seeds, and they don't have to, again, that crop doesn't have to be sown right now. You can pick one, go with it, then you can still weave in some of the other stuff as things go along after WrestleMania. So it really is intriguing because, again, like you mentioned, they planted all these seeds, and it has you and I having this conversation. Like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this?
That's what they want.
Remember this or this? Like, that's long-term storytelling thinking as opposed to something that's just direct and linear.
And that was the difference between Vince McMahon with the book and Triple H with the book, because Vince was booking like literally in guerrilla position. Like, you know what? Let's change this. Let's put Brock in there. Let's put Brock in there.
Pretty much. Let's go Brock Lesnar. Oh, okay.
Let's throw Brock in there. Let me get you out of
here.
The
Paul Heyman guy, by the way. The Paul Heyman guy. The Paul Heyman guy.
Let me get you out of here. You could, like I said, Dennis is a busy man. He's all over the place. I appreciate you coming through. Follow him on X at the Fan Rookie. Panthers Playbook. You guys are still putting out episodes right now, so especially as we head closer to free agency and the draft, follow them over on the WRAL YouTube channel. You can get new episodes from them, I believe, once or twice a week, if I'm not mistaken.
Every Thursday morning. Every Thursday morning, 7 a.m., we're putting one out for you.
There you go. Boom. So you got that there. And then, of course, he's the producer for Tim Donnelly for The Drive with Tim Donnelly. If you're in the Triangle area, you can listen to that 3 to 6, Monday through Friday for great sports talk. If you're not in the Triangle area, you can stream it. You go to WRL's website and just stream the audio from there. Technology, beautiful thing, 2025.
Hey, 99 on the Fans YouTube page. You can just watch it too.
There you go. Yeah, see, boom, they got you covered backwards and forwards. So there you go. We're gonna get out of here. It's Friday again. Programming note: East Forsyth and Ledford baseball tonight. 7 p.m. is the tentative pitch. Although when we did this Wednesday, they pushed it to 7:30. So just be prepared for that. JV's playing first, of course, but we're only doing the varsity game tonight. Myself and Chad Delp will be on the call live at 7 o'clock. Sports going on from 3 up until then on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. So get your fix there. We're going to go ahead and head out. Everybody go back to your cubibles. Everybody go back to work. We'll see you next week.